All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Anna Borges, your moderator today. I don't know if we're waiting for things to quiet down or just going on. Perfect. Oh yeah, I'm getting the nod. It's so nice to meet everybody. I'm so excited for this panel because as an extremely online human, I know that I need all of your wisdom, and I'm sure everyone here does too. So I'm going to go ahead and just kick it to our panelists to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit more about their jobs and why it requires them to be extremely online.
Hello, hi. My name is Rebecca Jennings. I write about internet culture at Vox, so I am online for that. I am also online just as a person because I often write about things that I myself am interested in. So there's a very little boundary between work online and life online, which is hard sometimes.
Hi, I'm Mandy Lee. I do a couple of things. I'm a content creator, a fashion writer, and a trend analyst. So all those things kind of require me to pay attention to what's going on in fashion online. And I also operate under the handle Old Loser in Brooklyn on my personal TikTok, which is also kind of my resume as well. So yeah, similar to Rebecca, I like being online to check out what's happening and also to share my work. I think it's a good way to be able to get your work out there, to show to more people, and just to analyze what's going on at large. But yeah.
Hi. I knew that would happen. I knew that was going to happen. I didn't even test it. Hi, I'm Yesenia Valdez. I'm a senior social media manager. I work at Teen Vogue. So my job is very online. I am plugged into every single outlet possible, 24/7. And yeah, it's part of the job. It's part of being in social media. So I'm online personally. I'm online for trends. Yep.
You basically can't log off. The title of this panel is logging off ? And the answer is no. Yeah. So as established, you are here because you're extremely online, and that comes with a lot of... Was that me? Let's see. This is my first IRL panel off of Zoom in probably 2.5 years, so we're trying. But I would just love to hear from each of you about I don't want to say the biggest challenges, but what challenges come to mind when it comes to taking care of your well-being in your particular role?
I think with me, there's this idea that you're missing out on something when you're not constantly online, which is this horrible, misguided way of thinking, because what you're missing is the same thing that is always online, which is just doom scrolling, funny distraction, something that may be happening but maybe not. You don't social media is a mess, as everybody knows. So I think there's that sense of FOMO that you feel when you're not online, not reporting on something that is happening at this moment. But what it really is you're having FOMO for living your life. That's what you should be worried about, not what if I don't scroll Twitter this second? What's gonna happen, you know?
You'll probably be a lot better.
I don't know what to do with this.
We're sharing mics now. It's good.
I think for me, the biggest challenge is privacy and setting boundaries, because I guess my work does overlap with my just me as a person, and that overlap can sometimes be scary to know where to place boundaries as far as time spent and information that you're willing to share. For example, I'm not going to share what neighborhood in New York City I live in just for privacy reasons. So I think or even my real name. And I think those are all things that anyone who wants to build an online presence, or even working online and getting your name out there, needs to think about, and just be kind of critical about what you're willing to share with the world, because that is there forever, basically. So I think having that boundary and just looking inward and deciding for yourself what is going to work and what's not is really important. So that was kind of tough in the beginning to figure out, but you have to go with your gut and stick with that.
That was great. I think for me, it's a lot of self-comparison. I don't think, I spend a lot of time on my phone, but I feel like when you are so tied to social media, it's a completely different job to be good at building traffic and building a brand. But there is like this pressure and expectation that offline, my personal presence should be just as good, if not great, because it's like, oh, I understand how to build a brand. And I think that that's a really intense pressure to put on yourself, and something that I always have to work to like remind myself that, one, people are not brands. They can be, but it's also just like a personal choice on how you choose to engage with social media, and it's not a make or break of like your career, obviously. And yeah, I'd say it's a lot of times I'm like, it's okay to not have like a ton of followers. Like this doesn't mean, it can mean things. It's like, it's hard. It's very nuanced because I'm like, obviously it can be awesome, but it's just as okay to like, for it to be your work and for your personal life to just be completely different.
So what does that? Oh no, it's me. Tech is great. Good to know that all the tech like problems of Zoom can also exist in real life. But okay, so those are the challenges, but how do you actually deal? Like what practices, what boundaries do you have in place? What advice do you have for navigating all that? Mandy, let's start with you this time.
Okay, so I think the first time I ever looked at my screen time, I was like completely horrified. And that was a wake-up call for me. You can't, I don't think it's healthy to spend 10 hours a day on your phone. Or at least for me, that was not healthy. So I think trying to work a 9 to 5 when you're an online person is not realistic. So maybe you do 12 to 9, or I don't know, even like 2 to 12. Every day is kind of different, but I really think like separating that, like I'm scrolling for fun versus I'm scrolling for work is really, really important. But also just like knowing when to turn your phone off and like enjoy your life. Like go out to dinner, go see friends, keep your phone in your pocket. Or airplane mode is underrated. Like put your phone on airplane mode and you're not gonna get notifications. Like you're not gonna feel like, I don't know, urgency to respond to an email or something because you don't see it, and what you don't see isn't going to kill you for a few hours, I don't think. But yeah, I think just like being aware of like the time you are spending on your phone and not in your real life is an important like self-awareness to have, and then knowing when to shut off.
I'll give you guys my best tip, which is when I have like the urge to scroll TikTok, I go do a workout on a treadmill and I walk uphill and scroll TikTok at the same time, so I feel double productive. My other tip is no TikTok in bed. I do not allow myself to scroll TikTok in bed because it just like wires me, whatever. And put your phone in do not disturb. That's my best advice.
I have a Finsta, and that is my best advice. I think you should have a fake account and have like your mom, no, not your mom, your closest friends. I think it's a really grounding way to remind yourself that it's not that serious. And if you're in your head and you're like, what do I post? What should my caption be? It's like, that's silly, like, because it shouldn't be that intense. And if it feels intense and it's not fun anymore, make a fake account and just post whatever you feel like posting. I'm refraining from using any swear words. But yeah, and then once you're there and you feel confident again, you're like, oh yeah, this is a good time. Then you can go back to your personal one and post there, or find balance, I don't know. But yeah, I'd say have fake accounts.
So we're talking about personal accounts, and I'm all for the alt's life. I don't call mine a Finsta, it's like the alt. But like Yesenia, you run a brand account, and that comes with like its own unique challenges. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. So Teen Vogue has about over 3 million followers on every platform. Well, no, on most of the platforms. So I'd say I don't know, it's just a completely different machine. I mean, you're functioning like a machine, and you look at social media and you realize that, yeah, there's brand identity, but there's also like engagement and goals for a company to reach, and also like, how are you building on that? How are you getting more people to like look at what your readers are, or what your writers are talking about? And I think that's what I really love about my job, is that the goal is to get people to the site, but not just to read things that don't matter, but it's like important information, like especially somewhere like Teen Vogue, where it can be very like political and identity focused and trying to have an outlet for people. But it's very different. I mean, I look at it as, a vessel, and how we can make it healthy, how we can keep it in line with the brand. And yeah, I mean, it's when things go on, though, it's like I'm on. Like, I'm on at night, I'm on in the morning, I'm on weekends. It kind of does, in some ways, feel like news. I feel like it's very comparable to, like, we say it's like a news cycle. It's like working for, like, a CNN, where it's just, like, if something's going on, and especially with Teen Vogue, if, like, we have trolls or people just really coming for us, it's like, I'm the one to read that, and I'm the one that has to manage that. And I think that's also just a good reminder in general, is like when you're online, you have to recognize when you're talking to these brands that there are people on the other end who are just making that happen. And I am digesting all of it in real time. And I can't really step away, because if I step away, it could get worse. So it's a lot of strategy too. So it's weird. I feel like at first it was overwhelming. Now I know how to manage it. It's not personal.
It's not personal, but it still hurts. Like
it does hurt. It hurts because you're like, I work really hard.
I think we have another. Yes.
Thanks. I work really, just kidding.
Yes.
I work really hard. And yeah, it's like, no, it's gone. No. It's gone again.
We tried.
And yeah, you're just like, man, I mean, it goes both ways, because if you're following something and you're committed to it and we mess up, that is really disappointing. And it's like, I don't want to disappoint you guys. Like, we're not trying to do that. So it is like a living and learning lesson, but I think that you have to have more grace for the fact that, like, there are people running these accounts and people mess up, and
Absolutely.
Train won't stop, though.
Absolutely. Yeah, Mandy, Rebecca, your exposure to the public is like even, or I don't want to say more direct, I don't want to play the comparison game here, but also like, how do you navigate your work being out there for like in the court of public opinion, being extremely online? I don't know who wants to take this one first.
I can take it.
I'll pass this.
So I think there's a lot of similarities between kind of like what Yesenia deals with as a social media manager for like Teen Vogue, and somebody who is just sort of like their own person on the internet, or I guess my biggest platform is TikTok. And yeah, I think like at first you take it so personally, especially with like thoughtful, like you think you're being thoughtful, you think you're being like respectful, but then, I mean, in the year and a half I've been doing this, I have learned so much from other people, and a lot of that is just being open to feedback, which I try to be as open as I possibly can, but then along the line you do kind of realize the difference between trolls and people who are like purposely misunderstanding you and genuine feedback. So that takes a long time, I think, to learn and decipher the difference, because there is a difference. Like, people can say whatever they want, but a lot of the time, not a lot of the time, but sometimes it's completely out of like left field, and it's not helpful. But when you can take critical feedback, I think that's really important, and you sort of like grow with your audience in a way. But yeah, I don't know, like it can hurt. I think especially for like, I'm a Pisces moon, so I really don't like being misunderstood. But that's just something you grow thicker skin for along the way. But yeah, they don't warn you about that. I don't think, like in either sort of like people facing job, essentially, they don't warn you about the personal tear downs and like criticism, things like that. Like the other day, somebody said my feet look unflattering, and I'm like, what? Your feet look unflattering? Yeah, I mean, like, that was a new one. But, you know, like really weird things like that, but it's sort of like water off a duck's back at this point. And I think if you have the intention of either being somebody on the internet or even writing about it, or like someone who's like more sort of on the back end, like Yesenia, you do have to grow a thick skin, unfortunately. It just comes with the territory in a way. But yeah.
Yeah, so my biggest platform is Twitter, and as everyone knows, like the trenches of discourse in Twitter is just like unmanageable. So I find it really hard to not take it very personally when someone has less than enthusiastic praise for something that I write, and it's like, it's really, really hard to remind yourself that like these platforms, like the stuff that get the most attention are like the confrontational things, the really like hyperbolic tweets, whatever. Like those are the things that are going to drive numbers. And so like half the time it doesn't really have much to do with you. It's like them like intentionally misunderstanding what you're putting out there and like trying to spin it in a way that they can be mad about. And so, yeah, I think like the biggest lesson I've learned is it's almost never worth it to reply. Costs nothing not to tweet. That's what I've learned.
Everyone needs that advice, but specifically probably people who aren't here, the ones who are like replying to you. Mandy, what I really love is that you highlighted a good thing about a job that's extremely online. You know, like you get feedback, and some of it is helpful and positive. So I would love to hear, and in case anyone else has anything they'd like to highlight, like the good parts of jobs that are extremely online. Because I don't want to just like sit here talking about like why it's awful for our well-being. Like what's awesome about it too?
No, I mean, I don't think people would be doing it if the net gain wasn't worth it in the end. And I mean, I think it's best to not complain more often than you're, showing grace and being grateful. Because people notice that, and nobody wants to like follow or support somebody who like complains all the time. At least I don't. But some of the good things, for example, like I've always treated my TikTok as my resume. I know that's not like a super common thing to do. It's more like fun and personable, and like people spam post and that's how they grow. But I sort of took a different direction and treated it as like my resume. I post fashion research and trend reports and just like analyze fashion more critically, and that really worked for me. I didn't follow anybody else's way they were doing things and tried to do my own thing and just listen to my intuition and do what I felt was right and lead with integrity, and that really worked out. Like I've been able to, like I'm a columnist now and have been able to get like really amazing opportunities that I definitely wouldn't have been able to achieve without social media. I'm a little bit older, I'm 31, like social media before, and I just think I kind of gave up on writing after a while because you have to sometimes prioritize your income and your stability, and that's sort of what I had to do. So without social media, I don't think I'd be able to make a career change later on in my life. But I think if it's something that you're passionate about, you should go for it. But yeah, the benefits totally outweigh some of the negatives. And yeah, it's much more important, I think, to focus on the big picture while still understanding there's pros and cons to every job. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like, I think as a reporter, if I was reporting on something like more serious, like politics or the economy or whatever, I wouldn't be able to like, as HR managers like to say, like bring my whole self to work. But I like that because I'm in this like goofy beat, like I think like I can be weird online, and like that just is another way of like, yeah, using my Twitter as my resume, or my Instagram as my resume. It's like you don't have to be like perfectly buttoned up and like separate yourself into your work self and your outside self, like Severance. I don't know if anyone else watched that, but it's really good. But yeah, no, and I mean, I love just like observing human behavior, and I think that like being online all the time, you just like get to do that all day long. So that's like what I enjoy the most.
Yay. I had
Hey,
so
if you don't
much
have one,
time
that's
to
okay.
think
No,
about
I'm kidding.
this. No, there are positives. Of course there are. I think exactly like you were saying, Mandy. Like it's allowed so many people so many cool opportunities, and that's sick. Like I just feel like there's so many other like diverse, marginalized voices that we are getting to hear from, and we're also getting to hear feedback from, and I love that so much. I love the critical aspect of social where someone can say, it's like a love-hate, where sometimes I'm like, people talk too much. Not everyone needs to have an opinion, which I tell myself all the time. But I do love seeing people with opinions and giving perspectives that I've never thought about, and that's beautiful.
Absolutely. At the back of my head, there's something that we had talked about, Yesenia, that I really want you to share with the audience when we were talking about like how you decide how much of yourself to put out there. Your comment about like bringing your whole self to work made me think of this because it's even more complicated when you're very online. And like, what does like authenticity, like, I don't want to say what does authenticity mean, but the difference between, is this you? Were you authenticity?
Okay.
That was a real question, guys, I promise.
Yeah. It was that there's a really big difference between being authentic and exposure. Authenticity and exposure are not the same. You can be an authentic person and you don't have to expose your whole self online. I think that people conflate the two a little too much, and then they lose a sense of themselves or feel this pressure to overperform. And it's not true. Being authentic does not equate exposure.
Absolutely. Thanks for letting me shoehorn that in. It just really stuck with me ever since we chatted. I think like no conversation about like being extremely online is complete without talking about unplugging. So I would love to hear from anyone who has like really good intentional practices that are sustainable for unplugging when you have this job. You already said yours. Yeah, you're like, I'm not in bed. Anyone?
Rules.
You do?
I can go. I think remembering that you cannot be online 24/7 and be on 24/7 and produce good work. Rest and you will be more inspired. Have boundaries and you will be more inspired to make good work. Like, I feel like, I don't know, I mean, I'm a millennial, but the like girl boss, like hustle culture, I think is really contrived because I don't think it necessarily equates to good, meaningful work when you're like pressuring yourself to produce and churn things out. Like, I promise, like if you take a break, your work will be better and you'll thank yourself because you'll have more like energy and motivation to like keep going.
Yeah, ditto. That's all. Yeah, I agree. I concur.
Amazing. And y'all have been doling out advice this whole time, but before we turn it out to the audience for questions, any last lingering pieces of advice for people who like want to be badass at their job without completely sabotaging their mental health?
I don't have one for the mental health thing, but my advice if you want to be a journalist is to pretend like you already are. Like pitch editors that you that are producing work at publications that you admire, follow them on Twitter, see what they're looking for, engage with them, and because that's where like journalists live. It's like just Twitter. Like, it's as much as it sucks, it's just what it is. And yeah, like, you're not a journalist, but like pretend like you are, because you can be. And I think like, especially college women, you guys have access to an entire population that adult journalists like aren't really a part of, and like use that to your advantage. Like, do what only you can do. Like, find the thing that like you can say, and like write about the things that you can write about because you have personal experience in that, or if you know people that do. Like, just really lean into those things.
Yeah, I mean, my advice applies to being a writer and a content creator, but if you need to hone in on your point of view and not imitate somebody else's or like do what everyone else is doing. You need to understand your own point of view and what makes you and your voice worth listening to, honestly. Like, because, I mean, in fashion writing, we're writing the same story. over and over and over for every single publication. Everyone reports on the same thing. What's going to give your story a bit of an angle? Like, everyone does Get Ready With Me videos on TikTok. What makes yours interesting? Like, what sets you apart? And that's not, to say, like, be a pick me or, like, make crazy stuff up for clickbait or whatever, but, like, honestly, like, you have something to say. You wouldn't be here if you didn't, and I think getting to know what that POV is what kind of elevates you in your career.
What if I was like, everyone should clickbait? Just kidding. Don't do that. I think that you have to remind yourself there's no right path. I think it does go back to authenticity. If it doesn't feel right to you, don't force yourself to create content or put yourself out there in a way that makes you uncomfortable. That is not the key. There's no one right way, and I think the more honest you are with yourself and who you are and what you really want to be doing, you will figure it out. You will get there. Don't ever feel a pressure to, like, change yourself, and don't allow something like social media to convince you that you have to be a certain way in order to get where you want to go. Just really be who you are.
I feel all warm and fuzzy inside. All right, can we take a couple questions from the audience? Yes. I don't know who has the mic. I don't think I'm choosing people to call on. Am I? Oh, amazing. I don't know.
My name is Lane. I'm a campus correspondent for Campus Maryland. My question is for Yesenia. I was wondering how you balance in your job creating content that's creative, fun, experimental, and creating content that
That's a really good question. It's kind of a 50-50. I think it's a give and take. We always say we have to keep the lights on. So sometimes you have to create content that is going to get you engagement and people are going to love and think is super fun in order to produce the content that you want people to see and you really want people to digest. I will say with Teen Vogue, we are lucky that we can just have a lot of fun with our content, especially on TikTok, and especially just like working with the talent that we get to work with. The point is that it's fun, but it's a balance. Yeah, I'd say you have to give a little to get a little.
Hi, I'm Avery, and I'm part of Her Campus MSU. And I have a question for you as well. What's your advice for getting started as a social media manager and actually getting hired?
Another great question. Transparently, social media was not my dream job. To be honest, it wasn't really a job until I was it was kind of a job, but people still, to this day, were fighting for like the fire the intern or what intern messed up on this. I'm like, it's not the intern. It's a real job. There's a person doing it. I think that it comes down to, I don't know. It's hard. It was really just friends. And it's been years coming. I feel like I started in completely different fields, and I've always wanted to be a writer. And then I had friends, and we all supported each other. And as we've grown together, again, like there are people in office that are way younger than me, and so I'm like, it just happened that I had a really good friend who was like, I think you'd be really good at this, and I was like, I don't want to do it. And then they were like, no, I really think you should try, because also like it might give you writing opportunities. And then honestly now I do really like doing it. And it's been a very great experience. So I don't know if that really answers your question. I think it's just like maintain I hate using the word authentic. I keep using the word authentic, but I'm like really maintain your truest networks. Like meet cool people, support those people will come around and support you as well. Yeah.
I don't know how is this one working yet? Oh, this one. Yes, thank you. I don't know how we are on time. How many more questions can we do? Don't know. All right. I am actually going to do you in the black. I can't actually. Oh, yes, please. Yeah. This TV is blocking. this way.
Oh, working. I think it really, really depends, especially like when you go freelance. It's just like literally like I could be on the couch all day doing nothing and like researching and getting ready for pitches and getting ready for content. And then it could be like I'm up at 8 a.m. and I'm not done until 10 p.m. Like it's so different because I was so used to working in corporate. Like I worked in corporate for 7 years before I went freelance, and that was 9 to 5. I was very strict about working 9 to 5, and when it's 5 o'clock, I'm done. And when you're working freelance, it's like you're never not done because there's always something else you could be doing, pitching, getting back emails, making content. Like that's why having boundaries is so important about like in honoring your personal time versus when you're working. But to be honest, like I try to keep my work week 40 hours like I would with corporate, but it just doesn't happen every time. It could be 20, it could be 60. Like I hate to give such a vague answer like that, but that is the reality I think of working freelance. Like it's a mixed bag. And it's the same with income too. Like you could have a really, really good month and then the next month you're like, oh, this is bad. Like hopefully next month is better. Like it really, really depends. It's like the Wild West with freelancing.
Thank you. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Got it. Cool.
Hello? It's going? Okay.
Whatever's happening over
Okay.
there.
Okay. The second part to the question was also, have you ever had, like, in freelance or in a company, a client that you were doing social media for where, like, the relationship that you have with them is a little difficult because they want you to use their templates or whatever they're requiring of you, but it's actually not working, which is why they hired you. But it's having that conversation that's like, oh, I know what I'm doing. This is why you hired me. But they're like, I want you to do it this way, though. Have you ever had that relationship?
Yeah. Yeah. And thank God I'm a paranoid person because if not, I don't think I'd be combing over my contracts the way that I do. But some of these brands will like screw you over essentially, and like you don't find out until you're reading through a contract. Like, for example, I found out this brand I was trying to work with had a 90-day exclusivity clause in their contract. They were not paying me for that. And I didn't find out until I read through the contract. And I went back to them and I was like, I don't appreciate the lack of transparency here. I'm out. So I pulled out. I can't believe I didn't mention this before, but if anyone's freelancing or if anyone's doing like content, read your contracts.
Read your contracts.
Have your friend read your contract. Have your family member who took one law class 10 years ago read your contract. Like whatever it is, like that, guys, that is so important because that is your business and that is your value on the line. But yeah, and I've also, and this of course comes from a place of extreme privilege to be able to say no to things, and I definitely recognize that and want to acknowledge that. But yeah, I've gotten some opportunities before where they want you to read a script and it's just that's not my brand. So that's not something I'm willing to do. But I think kind of like what Yesenia was saying, like if you are authentic consistently, whatever that means to you, you're gonna get fewer and fewer opportunities that don't make sense for you. So like the garbage stuff that you might get, like they are so much more few and far between once you build a platform that really is like what you believe in. So I think again that just takes some time to get to. But yeah, that will happen. Yeah.
All right, I think wrap up, or one more question wrap up. Wrap up. All right, it is time for our, sorry to everyone who still has a question. I would love to hear all of them, but can join me in thanking our panelists one more time. Thank you.